So I've talked about the best Mario Party minigames, but now it's time for the worst. This list is based off of which minigames I have the least fun with, and aren't very intuitive overall. It was really hard to find bad minigames for this one, but I tried my best. So without further ado, let's go! So this is one that I feel like a lot of people won't agree with me on, but I'm not exaggerating when I say how challenging it was to put this list together. Fuzzy Flight School pits you in a plane, and you have to avoid the fuzzies as the name implies. You move around with motion controls, and honestly, they aren't that great. They do work, but it doesn't feel polished as my movements aren't as pristine as they should be. And also, when I was testing the online mode with my bae Nico BBQ, he discovered a tactic on how to win this minigame almost every time. So get your notebooks out, kiddos, and take some notes. Step 1. You literally chill in a corner. Profit. No, seriously. Most fuzzies can't hit you in the corner, so congratulations, you just broke the game. Now sure, this method doesn't work perfectly, you will occasionally have to move a little to the side or maybe a bit up and down, but for the most part you can stay in the same place the whole time. And on top of that, you can take up to 3 hits, so even if you do run into a fuzzy, it's way more likely your opponents will be taken out first because they're probably in the middle swarming around like a normal person. But we're not normal. I've seen you guys in the comments, y'all are a bunch of memers. But yeah, maybe if this game didn't have this small exploit, it wouldn't be on this list, but too bad, so sad. It's time to get up close to your phone screen and look sharp, because that's what this minigame is all about. Now, I won't lie, the idea for this one is kind of neat. You'll find a character on a pedestal, like a toad, or fishy boob Spike, and you have to get them in focus with a magnifying glass. You use your Joy-Con and tilt that to get the focus just right. And the controls work pretty well too, but that's the entire premise of Look Sharp. Focus 3 characters and you're done. After playing it a few times, it just gets way too easy and it goes by so fast. And yes, I get not all minigames need to be challenging, but the simplicity of this one makes it kind of boring. I think it would have been cool if the pedestal moved back and forth for the final character. That would have at least been a little bit harder and more varied, but that's sadly not the case. And it's the same 3 characters every single time, which seems crazy considering how many Mario characters are already modeled into the game. They could have added a few more. So this here minigame, Maths of Glory, breaks rule number 1 for video games. Do not add education to entertainment. That's a big no-no, Mr. Nintendo. Well, okay, this game barely requires thinking, but it is a bit on the simple side. You and a partner have to hit a dice block that multiplies to a final number. That number determines how many cannon shots you get for destroying your opponent's 3D puzzle castle. And yes, 3D puzzles do exist in real life. I used to own one and my golly, they're complicated to make. But anyway, the big issue with this game is the spinner rolls way too slow. Maybe this is just me, but I can get a 6 or a 5 almost every single time. And I haven't even played this minigame that much. It's a pretty simple pattern if you have half-decent reflexes. There's definitely some humor in watching a castle made out of a puzzle slowly crumble, but it's always just one shot at a time. So if, say, you got a really big number, you don't get like a giant cannonball, but instead a bunch of tiny pellets, which seems like a missed visual opportunity. But now I'm just being kind of nitpicky. If the spinner was a bit faster, then maybe this minigame would have been a bit better, but it's just not. Alright, now we're getting to the truly mediocre games. The above 3 have a few flaws here and there, but It's the Pits is just a pain to play. It's another 2v2 minigame, but instead of 4 players, there's 16 for some reason. Now first, why is there so many players? And second, what's the point of making this a team-based minigame when it could have easily been a free-for-all? Anyway, this purple light spins around and eventually slows down a bit and stops. When it stops, the floor drops and any players in that range are knocked out of the arena. You either play until an entire team is gone, or whoever has the most teammates at the end wins. I really feel like a lot of this game is just luck-based. Even if you're playing with 4 human players, the extra computers are often stupid and bunch up together. There are so many times where I can survive all the rounds, but I lose because my teammates all die and I'm left standing alone. This is one of those minigames that could have so easily been good too. I guess when the devs were testing this, they might have thought the game was boring with only 4 people, but I think it would have been more skill-based. But regardless, it's just not that great a minigame. You guys remember Roll Call from Mario Party 2? That was a decent enough minigame, wasn't it? Well, it's kind of made a comeback in a different form now, known as Senseless Census. The idea is the same. You have to basically count heads before the timer runs out. You're on a train and you have to go back and forth to try to count all the toads. A lot of these toads are running around, and sometimes they'll sit and then stand up, making it really hard to keep track. Which I realize that's the whole point. It's supposed to be hard to keep track of the count. But here's the difference between roll call and Senseless Census. In roll call, I can see the entire screen, so even though it's a lot of information to retain, it feels feasible. Here, it's near impossible to keep track of the toads unless you have an amazing memory because you don't see everything at once. Maybe I'm just bad at the game, but I just get so frustrated trying to remember all these freaking toads, and I'm just not a fan of this one. The only good part about this minigame is the dancing toads, because they're just adorable, but that's it. And we've got another motion-controlled minigame on our list. This one is barreling along. You got 4 players on top of barrels, and you just have to reach the finish line. There's some grass and water that can slow you down pretty dramatically, but there's also speed boost to pick up your pace. This would all be fine and dandy if the controls weren't completely horrible. It's just something about the way turning works. It all feels so inconsistent. Like sometimes I'll turn really light and then sometimes really sharp even though I'm using the same motions. And then there's the fact that it's the same map every single time. At least 1 or 2 extra would have been nice. This minigame is playable, but it just feels like a chore. I'd have as much fun cleaning my bathroom than playing barreling along. And also, why on earth does freaking grass slow you down so much? It's just grass, like come on. Man, this game is really obsessed with adding a billion characters to a minigame. So Lit Potato is basically Hot Bob-omb, but almost impossible to win. Instead of throwing one Bob-omb around a circle, now it's multiple, so it's way more likely you'll blow up. Now this makes sense in theory because there's more players, but it feels just as bad to be the one blown up as it did back in the day. Surprisingly, this is a 2v2 minigame, so it's technically not that big a deal if you die, considering your team can still win. But I always just feel so horrible every time I lose. It's like I got suckered into buying some expensive lottery ticket and getting nothing out of it. Lit Potato is certainly not lit. That's all I gotta say. Oh god. Now this one actually lulls me to sleep. Suit Yourselves is a really basic card game. Kamek shows everyone a card, and there's 4 of that same suit on the table. The cards flip over, sometimes get a little mixed around, and everyone grabs the card. There are so many problems with this minigame. I guess I'll start with the fact that it is way too easy, with computers or human players. You're shown where the correct cards are for like 3 seconds, when the time window should have been way shorter. If you play with computers, you literally just have to focus on one card, then pick up that one card and the others always pick the right ones. You can't lose. And heck, even if you do mess up, you can mess up 4 times, like my goodness. And oh, they tried to make Suit Yourselves harder by slowly mixing these 2 cards and then doing a slow rotation. Wow, that was so hard, guys. Whew, I could never keep track of that. So what we're left with is really just a boring and slow-paced minigame. And it's really not that interesting to look at either. It's functional, but certainly not fun. Initially, I saw this minigame and I thought it looked pretty cool. I mean, look, you get to pet a giant wiggler. Well, the problem is he's sleeping, and we're about to bother him for no reason. Everyone takes turns petting this sleeping wiggler for 5 seconds. You're scored on how many strokes you can get. The longer the time goes, the more you'll notice Wiggler open an eye or get pissed. And eventually, Wiggler wakes up absolutely furious. And as a side note, I can just imagine an innocent 3-year-old playing this game and getting nightmares from that Wiggler's face. It's so sudden and loud. And you know, I don't blame Wiggler for his actions. I wouldn't want someone touching me while I'm asleep. I'd be pretty upset myself. So you basically win by petting him the most times, and it's completely random when Wiggler is gonna wake up. And look, I know Mario Party is a very luck-oriented game and that's what makes it fun, but when it comes to the mini-games, some form of strategy is nice and that just doesn't exist here. And also, why does the Wiggler chase only 3 of the 4 characters at the end? I don't care if you annoyed him the most, you all deserve to get chased down. But if you thought this was bad, wait till you see number 1. What else can it be but Drop Quiz? Well, not that I know this is universally hated because the game is so new, but holy crap, this minigame is terrible. The name alone turns me off. Drop quiz. I graduated from college. I thought I was done with quizzes. This is a 1v3 minigame where you start by seeing a screen with a variety of enemies and fruits. Then the one player picks a question, and the other three have to guess it correctly or they drop to their death. Now, the screen you look at is always so random. It usually consists of toads or Koopa Paratroopas holding fruit with bullet bills in the background. And the questions you're asked are always so obscure and out there. It's always something stupid like, what was toad number 1 carrying? Now, why the heck would anybody keep track of something as random as that? It's like trying to remember what you ate for lunch 4 days ago. Yeah, that's right. You can't remember because it's not necessary to. Now, once you do figure out what the questions are, you can kind of get a grasp of what to memorize, but still, like half the time, I just have to randomly guess what the answer is and pray for the best. Maybe if the questions weren't so obscure, this minigame would be a little bit better. But overall, I really love Super Mario Party, and it was fun trying to find the worst of the worst because there's a whole lot of good in this game. And speak of, if you missed my top 10 on the best minigames, you can check it out right now. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and let me know in the comments what you think the worst Super Mario Party minigames are and why. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.